Welcome to, oh, yeah, I'm live. Awesome. And you can hear me. Cool. Awesome. Welcome to Linguistics You Can Use. It's Friday, August 13th. That's right. It is Friday the 13th. And if you grew up in the culture I did, you'll recognize this is an unlucky day, since 13 is considered an unlucky number in this culture. Uh, why does 13 mean unlucky? What would make someone be afraid of something like a number? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Meaning is created in our minds by associating certain things with other things. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about how these associations create meaning as much as we understand it in this current day. So, let's take a look at my notes. I every single week I talk about how I'm going to make better notes, and I did, but like they're still not the best because, still a work in progress. This is a live stream. It's supposed to be a conversation, right? And so I actually want to take this opportunity to let me know if you have any thoughts about what we're gonna chat about today. Do you have any phobias of your own? We'll get into some of mine in a bit. Or are you interested in just something that I might mention? So just let me know what you want to chat about, and we will get to your interests. Just making sure that I have. Okay, so we have triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. Uh, so let's go on a little bit of a linguistic research journey, right? Uh, we're going to discuss personal fears and cultural boogeymen, right? So the number 13, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick search. So where did the fear of 13 come from? Ha ha ha. Because today's Friday the 13th, right? Of course, it's going to be one of the first, uh, uh, yeah, answers. So let's look at what National Geographic says about the number 13. So it seems like, this is from 2015. And, oops, no. Oh, I guess National Geographic doesn't want me to use them as a source. So let's see if the History Channel can let me read their history of Friday the 13th. So now I'm on history.com. All right, so long considered a harbinger of bad luck, Friday the 13th has inspired a late 19th century secret society, an early 20th century novel, a horror film franchise, and not one but two unwieldy terms. Parascavadecatriophobia and Frigga triskaidekaphobia that describe fear of the supposedly unlucky day. Huh. So, as I was saying, you can hear triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13, in the fear of Friday the 13th. Frigga triskaidekaphobia. Oh, did I? I might have actually misspelled it on my notes. But anyway, uh, Frigga is the Norse goddess of Friday. Well, not of Friday. Friday's named after Frigga. So Friday 13, the fear of Friday the 13th basically is Paraska Paraska Paraskavadekatra. Let's see if they explain that one. Okay. They say that it's uncertain exactly when this particular tradition of 13 being unlucky began. 12 is completeness in Western cultures, they say. And so, kind of the 13th is just bad luck, right? Because if 12 is complete, and if you add one more on that, it's like, oh gosh, now I get to get to another 12, and like I don't want to have to do another 12. So, you know, they even history.com is saying the ancient code of Hammurabi omitted a 13th law from its list of legal rules. I'm pretty sure they have more than 20. It's 5, 6, 13 times 2, 26. Yeah, because 25 wouldn't, isn't divisible by 2. Anyway, let's not talk about math. That's not my subject. So, we have Fear of 13, and this is the one that I grew up with, right? I learned that the fear of Friday the 13th has to do with the fact that there are 13 guests at the Last Supper, 12 apostles plus Jesus. And since one of the apostles was a betrayer, Judas, then that number 13 became unlucky. So, yeah, 13 guests at a dinner table was considered a bad omen because of the Last Supper. So only 12 people at a, dinner was considered good. And then, you know, it just kind of filtered into society through that point. We tend to, and this is where I'm going to get back to my notes. So, Friday the 13th comes from our cultural connections, based on what we think about things mean to us, right? So, that's right. It's philosophy day. My notes are all over the place. It is, an interesting. This is fun. I have fun. It's just always an interesting experience to do a live class on a topic that I'm just kind of like riffing on, right? So, so we have real phobias, right? We have uh, things that people have logical fears of. But often phobias take it to an extreme of illogicness, right? So that's why Friday the 13th becomes this like cultural joke, because logically people understand that there's no reason to be afraid of 13, right? The 13 is no more or less lucky than any other number that we have chosen to create in our societies, right? I believe the number 4 is unlucky in China because it's the characters look like the character for 4 also can be confused with death or something like that. So a lot of times, and that's if it's not 4, let me know. But like these are cultural fears that are created based on the language that we speak. Oh my gosh! So bringing it back to right the meaning, right? We're talking about the meaning of words today, not necessarily the mechanics or the technical aspects, but the way that our brains make associations, and then we assign these associations words, right? We create, and those words obviously are crafted by the way that we use our mouth, our sound producers, but it comes back to the how we express these things to each other, right? So, that's why I started talking about this. So, back to my notes for a bit. So, this is from Wikipedia, right? So, the word phobia may also refer to conditions other than true phobias. For example, the term hydrophobia is an old name for rabies, since an aversion to water is one of that disease's symptoms. A specific phobia to water is called aquaphobia instead. Hydrophobe is a chemical compound that repels water. So we see the word phobe, right? Phobe is the word that we've chosen to associate with this idea of fear, of sort of an extreme fear, irrational to the point of some things, but also, extreme for a good reason, right? So a hydrophobe is a chemical compound that repels water. Phobe, the chemical compound is doesn't want the water next to it, so it's fearful. It ple- what is it? Flings it away, yeah. And this is where I like. Similarly, the term photophobia usually refers to a physical complaint, so an aversion to light due to inflamed eyes or excessively dilated pupils, right? Rather than an irrational fear of light. Now, this is interesting to me because it shows how we blend meaning in our language, right? As someone with photosensitivity, I feel the term photophobia fits me very well because um, I've learned to associate bright lights and such with a certain kind of pain. Not always, but it's so that I'm always conscious of what the brightness level of an environment might be if I'm going to go there. So, taken to an extreme, I learn, that maybe I should be afraid of these environments, right? It makes me feel like I have to do extra work. And so my brain is just being like, if you don't need to, if it's not essential, how about let's avoid it, right? And so the more you avoid situations because they bring up these bad feelings, the more these irrational elements of the fear develop. And then a phobia happens. And it happens, it seems like a natural process. It is much like language change in a way. I've discussed this on the linguistics you can use before, about how language shifts, the sounds shift, right? From one generation to another. One group of people start saying a particular vowel sound a certain way, and in 2 or 3 generations it's the default in the whole culture or whatever like that. So in the same way, our brains do that just a little bit faster than generations, right? Because our synapses, they're always firing. And sometimes they're even more active at night when we're sleeping, because that's when a lot of these connections are really being made. So let me take a little let's say a detour, a side trip, right? It's gonna come right back, don't worry. It's just, it's like we're on the main road and we're gonna take a little detour to a tourist spot, to a roadside attraction, as it's known in the States, and talk about crows. I love crows. They're a very familiar and popular creature in Seattle, where I am, but they also cause some consternation. And if you don't know what consternation means, you will in a second. So, let's talk about crows. So, crows teach each other to be afraid of certain people, but not in the way that we would think of people, right? They associate uh, characteristics of people with fear or with happiness, right? But we're going to talk about fear today because that's what we're talking about today. It's Friday the 13th. It's a scary day. So I feel like in my, this is all my ideas about crows at this point. It seems to me they've made it their jobs to kind of observe us, right, as a species. It's like they urban crows and maybe rural crows, I don't know, but I feel like they're a little bit more like the humans can do their thing, we'll do our thing. But urban crows follow us and our routines to, you know, for food, for entertainment, for all of these things. And so it's like we are their job basically. They they watch us and they talk about us to each other. And so this happens very commonly in my area, that an area of a forest especially will start to become known as being dive bombed, right? You're gonna get dive bombed by those crows, and most of the time it is during nesting season, right? If there's lots of babies around, parents are going to be protective. But this is a study done by the University of Washington, actually, where some ornithologists, some people who study birds, they wore certain masks and made them associated with dead crows. So the crows in that area started to talk to each other and warn each other about the person who, the masked person. And whenever anybody, right, any student who was in this research project wore that mask, the crows started to attack them. And it didn't have anything to do with nesting. It didn't have anything to do with, just uh, instinct, as it were, right? Just like seasonal instinct or all of those kinds of things. It was a taught, learned behavior amongst each other because they want to, protect their space from the dangerous ones that they see. And they have learned that they can tell the difference, right, between uh, the ones that will help them and the ones that will hurt them. So they talk about us. um, so, in a generic random, ness in the forest, right, one day, you might be happen to walking through, right, and you're wearing the same scarf color as a person who happened to be walking through the day before, and that person was like throwing rocks at trees, right? Because you know how people are. Not everybody's cool. Some people want to throw rocks at trees. Or maybe they didn't even think about the crows being there and they were just getting out of frustration and they just wanted to throw, they needed to get, and the crows took offense at that. And so the next day, they're like, "Hey, here's that person again. You look similar enough." And they, start being like, "Go away, go away." And you react, no, you're trying to defend yourself and you get all angry and all this stuff. And they're like, "Aha, we knew it. They're not a good person." And then all of a sudden, that area becomes known as a place where crows are going to dive bomb you, especially if you're wearing a particular kind of article of clothing or something like that. And, you know, nobody knows why. Nobody knows why the crows are acting like that. Well, the same way those un those associations, right, happen very organically and naturally if you can see the chain of events, right? Our brains make associations we're very unaware of that keeps getting reinforced, and those reinforcements start to develop into phobias. So, and it doesn't even have to be something that happened to you, right? In that crow study, the generations who came after, right, they didn't ever see the masked individual eventually. And then, like, after a bit of time passed, ones who had never experienced the masked uh, person, what is it, came and oh yeah, the crows, the researchers waited for a few generations, and then the ones who had never experienced firsthand these masks still reacted very violently to the masked figures because they had been taught that that was dangerous. So somehow the crows were relaying to each other some characteristics of that particular, thing that made generations down the line afraid of this thing, even though they had no direct experience of the fear. So, this does sound like it's going somewhere. So there is very clear evidence, right, that kids pick up the fears of their parents. And it's these are things that don't have to happen to you at all, right? You may never have experienced the original source of fear, but if you grew up in a household where spiders are considered like the most dangerous thing ever, and one or both of your parents react incredibly fearful and violently fearful about spiders, you're going to have that sense in the back of your mind, right, growing up, that spiders are bad, that they're scary, and they're going to hurt you no matter what. Versus somebody else whose family is just like, well, yeah, we don't want spiders in our house, but like, they're not, whatever. That kid might grow up to be, somebody who is an arachnobiologist. So we have an arachnophobia and somebody who studies spiders, right? Like, so the ways that our brains start to associate particular stimuli, particular, uh, you know, things that come to us, uh, they start to develop meanings under the surface, and those meanings pop up. So it makes a lot of sense, right? In an evolutionary sense. Our species evolved at the extreme end of socializing. So our survival depends a lot on our community, and it makes sense our brains would associate the fears of the community to a personal danger, right? And I think this gets us into prejudice. Yeah, it does. Now, don't worry, we're going to stay quite high level, esoteric today. So try to assuage your fears that you're going to be called out for anything. Uh, in fact, first, we're going to take a quick trip to the past. Let's talk about how this word got into our language. So if you know much about language at all, then you probably recognize this as a Greek sounding word. And you would be right. It comes from the Greek Phobos. Phobos was a god, the ancient god of fear. So we have a personification of fear and panic applied to irrational fear and a condition that causes anxiety and panic. Phobos, as an entity to the Greeks, was the son of Ares, the god of war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love and passion and sex and all that stuff. So, seems our ancestors understood a lot about the brain, We don't give them a lot of credit often for the way that they sort of like, up took these internal concepts and applied them, like externally personified them so that they could like, play with them as ideas and then reapply them back to themselves, right? I have a feeling there's a lot in our ancient ancestors, ideas that we don't give them a lot of credit for, and I like going back to them a lot. So anyway, Phobos is from the Greek. Phobia is from the Greek. And, we see that the combination of like sex and violence or passion and violence, right? These sensations to the ancient Greeks, when they mingle, they create this sensation of fear, of terror, right? The ultimate sense of what do I do? Paralyzation, even maybe, right? And, if you think about a lot of times, those are the natural reactions that we have to the feelings that we have, especially when we grow up in cultures that tell us that these things inside of us we need to tamp down, right? Oh, that gets us back to the whole, like, creating meaning thing today. So, bringing us back to prejudice, right? all of these emotions, these feelings, they come from physical sensations. We put meaning onto these feelings based on our personal experience. So let's see where. There it is. So you may have grown up in an environment like me, right, where uh, the the fears weren't highlighted, right? I grew up in a household where the overwhelming message that I got was, people are people, treat people as individuals, don't be rude, let people be who they are. But also, right, don't let people like walk over you and don't let them tell you who you should be, right? I got these dual messages basically like you deserve as much courtesy as others as you should give to others, right? So I'm like, yeah, people are who they are. That's cool. I don't have to be around them. That's cool. Same for me, right? Like I'm who I am. You don't have to be around me. You got your own life. Gotta go. Like, do your thing. We can coexist on this very large planet without coming into conflict. But like, some people want to tell me what to do, and so that's where I'm going to go back to my notes. So over, that's that. I wanted to make that a highlight because in my, in my brain, the way my making the connections that my brain made when I was younger were um the overt message I got was, yeah, we need to all get along somehow. But, we still grow up in a larger culture. And the larger culture can often have a bigger influence on our thought processes than our home environment. So these feelings of fear around certain groups of people or about certain ways of living or all of these things, they become a part of and me before we realize what's going on. And it takes a great effort to critically examine your thoughts and how those thoughts make you feel, and then choose to, agree or disagree with yourself, basically. So it is complicated. It's hard because our brains are always making these connections, and it's only occasionally that we're conscious of these processes that lead us to assign meanings to a feeling. It's a lot of work. So, but this is the thing. Some people do tend to do this more naturally than others, right? Are you someone who tends to overanalyze situations, right? Are you somebody who doesn't? Are you somebody who is just, hey, I'm gonna let, I'm not gonna, I don't have that intensity. It doesn't matter so much to me. I'm just gonna, you know, not, I'm gonna try and make everybody else as calm as me, right? So that's, I guess really the heart of today's exploration of phobias and Friday the 13th. It's a sense of how do you create meaning from the associations that have come into your life, right? Uh, are you feeling an urge to agree or disagree, right? The feelings, these urges of wanting to express ourselves come from emotion ultimately. And it matters for in terms of crafting sound meaning, right? The dual meaning of the channel name is to not just focus on the individual words or what I want to express, but what others might get from it as well, right? It's a complicated dance of uh, negotiating meaning between people with vastly different experiences. And it's only going to become more so, right? The more our culture blends in various ways, the more we have to be overt in our meaning about when we speak, the more we have to be overt in our meaning when we speak, because we have different expectations from our pasts. And that's uncomfortable. This sense of overt communication is very uncomfortable to a lot of people who grew up in a society very influenced by Eng- English culture, right? Colonialism, and especially the overwhelming British Empire. You know, that the mores of the Georgian into Victorian into Edwardian, right? Those three eras of the empire rising at its peak and then sort of, falling. Though that era is just about, 100 years ago. It's not that far along away. And those attitudes are just now starting to fade as the people who have living memory of that era, and they're still around, are fading, right? These attitudes, the feelings that are created inside of us come from the culture as much as from our individual experiences. So if a culture is saying, well, intense feelings are bad, then people who feel intensely are going to have these, develop more phobias than other people because they are trying to sublimate, they're trying to subsume, and sub, right? They're trying to depress, they're trying to put down their natural self. And that's a lot of times where fears come from, right? So earlier I spoke about how social species, so we're a very social species, we're the ultimately social species, right? We wouldn't be in cities of millions if we weren't a social species. So the fear of not fitting in is extreme. Gosh, I feel like I had a really good flow going there, and then my brain wanted to take like two tracks, and then it just like was like, let's just like go somewhere else entirely. So, yeah, language is fascinating to me for this reason, right? The study of language and how ideas of our cultures are created is so arbitrary, right? And studying language, studying linguistics kind of reveals that to me. And it also reveals how easy it can be to change our ideas and our society if we just decide to, right? The way that we use language influences the way that we think about the world. Not to such a degree, right, that individual languages change our thought processes or anything like that. But the words we use, the concepts, and that's where we get back into meaning, right? The feelings that we assign to certain words, that's a meaning. And so those meanings that we proliferate, we spread amongst the culture, are the ones that tend to be accepted as normal. It takes a lot of effort to shift the ideas of a society from, you know, very repressive to very open. And that is a fear that a lot of people are having right now. So, in honor of Friday the 13th, I hope you enjoyed our little exploration of phobia. Uh, that's all the linguistics you can use for this week. If there's a particular language topic, linguistic topic, or anything like that you are interested in exploring, please let me know. Shoot me a chat, uh, or how about an email, right? Chat, email. Yeah, those are two ways you can connect with me. I'm Sonatina. Thank you for joining me, and have some fun out there crafting sound meaning. I'll see you next week.